And on the show this evening, we have some special guests, panelists joining us from different countries, from Ukraine, from Poland, from America, and also from New Delhi. But first up, I'd like to introduce our panelists and also go across to Abhishek as we get some more breaking news updates as Russia keeps the diplomacy option and the diplomatic route open as of this minute. That's the breaking news update that I have. But let me introduce this evening on the show Maxim Muzyka, who's the former commander of the Special Operation Team between 2014 and 2016. He's now in the Reserve Forces, joining us live from Ukraine this evening. Mr. Maxim, thank you for speaking to Republic TV, joining us on the broadcast. Jakub Kudla, who's a media worker from Warsaw, Poland, joining us on the broadcast. Mr. David Maples, an expert in US, Russia, Ukraine politics, also a professor in the University of Alberta, joining us live from America. And Major General G.D. Bakshi is also on the broadcast. But quickly getting in an update from Abhishek Kapoor, our senior executive editor, joining us live on the breaking update that we had, Abhishek, of what top security experts, diplomats included, the foreign minister in Russia. There is a sense that Russia perhaps wants to keep the diplomatic route open.
Well, yes, Niranjan. So this is being reported that President Putin had a meeting with Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia. And it so happens, interestingly, that this was a televised meeting between the two, or some parts of it were televised, in which Lavrov is heard telling President Putin that all options so far as diplomacy is concerned are not yet exhausted. And to which President Putin did a thumbs up and said, good. Now, that's very interesting because only a few months back in November, President Putin really wanted these tensions to simmer because he wanted to make a point that any further move of NATO by way of expansion or inclusion of Ukraine into the defense pact or alliance will not be accepted as such by the Russians. And now if President Putin is suggesting that maybe talks can be allowed to go, I think that gives us an idea as to whether how far, if at all, war is, which means it's not happening like tomorrow. The amassing of troops is there, so obviously that option, so far as Russians are concerned, would always be there to get into Ukraine and make a point insofar as expansion of NATO is concerned, because that's the key issue or the sticking point on which this entire rising of tensions in Europe has happened. So I think this is an important takeaway. But then the fact of the matter is mobilization has happened from both the sides. Americans are very clear that they are not going to tolerate any use of force by the Russian side from whichever border they try to get inside Ukraine. And I think for the next 48 hours, it's going to be a very tense period and for the world community to watch out for, Niranjan.
Let me get in our panelists. Mr. Maxim Muzyka, who's been a former commander of Special Operation Team in Ukraine, is joining us live. So he has the defense perspective with him. Mr. Maxim, if I can come to you first. You saw the pictures of that meeting. I think those are the first pictures of the Ukraine president meeting the new German chancellor this evening. Do you think pressure is also somewhere working with Russia? If you look at the messaging that's coming out of the Kremlin now with, top diplomats, even the foreign minister in Russia talking about, keeping the diplomatic route open.
Look, thank you very much for your interest to our situation, to our conflict. Actually, I believe that diplomatic pressure is working. And I believe that interest of the world and this light of attention to this conflict, it's working right now, and it's made pressure upon Russia. They don't like to act openly. So in this light right now, they can't do anything. But anyhow, if there are any aggression from their side, we will fight. So it's obviously, and we are not just scared about that.
Yes. And Mr. Maxim, what do you make of, and what are the reports that you have? There are different conflicting numbers versions. You speak to anybody in Russia, they tell you, listen, this entire Western media reporting of a possible invasion is bunkum. It's not going to happen. It's a hype being created by the NATO forces, by the Western media. What's the Ukrainian perspective and the version of how this build-up has been happening?
We are completely aware that there is building up of forces. We understand that there is possibility of aggression, more active aggression. But at the same time, we are in the war during 8 years. So we are ready to fight back. We will defend ourselves. It will be not easy prey for Russia.
Yes. Let me get in one more perspective on the show this evening. Joining us live from Poland this evening is Jakub Kudla. Poland also bracing for a situation where Ukrainians perhaps leave the country. Now, many countries are bracing for a refugee influx given the situation. There is a sense of panic. There is a sense of panic, and that's what, pro-Russian media says, that there is a sense of panic. There is an impression of panic, panic being created in this entire situation. What's the Polish perspective? Jakub. Jakub Kudla. Yes, go ahead.
First, let me say first, we don't see here any panic, and I mean in Poland and in Ukrainian too. This is the first thing we need to say. Of course, we are preparing as Poland for the worst, but we are still believe that there is some kind of diplomat solution, and we can still avoid the worst. But as a neighbor of the country, which is now in the next Russian threat, we need to be prepared for any situation. So now our local government was asked to prepare some capacity for potential Ukrainian refugees, but still we believe that it's the worst scenario and it's still time to avoid the worst.
Major General G.D. Bakshi also joining us live now. Before I go across to Mr. Maples, who's joining us from Edmonton. Major General G.D. Bakshi, you saw the kind of build-up that's happening. You were live on Republic this evening when we were discussing, this virtual sort of a war zone that is being deployed. It's almost like a war zone, isn't it, General Bakshi? In Estonia, you have rocket launchers that are being stationed. In Lithuania, Danish fighter jets have been stationed. In the Baltic Sea, you have Danish frigates. UK has sent Apache choppers. In Poland, you have troops from the UK. In Romania, France deploying soldiers. UK RAF squadrons. In Bulgaria, jets from Spain. 2 Dutch F-35 jets. In the Black Sea, Spanish warship on standby. UK Type 45 destroyer. US keeping nearly 10,000 troops on standby. Russia, of course, with over 1 lakh troops that we are hearing, are on standby. It's almost like an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation. General Bakshi, how do you see the situation unfolding?
Of 12 combined armed armies, or what we call corps of the Russian army, 11 are deployed all around Ukraine. There is currently an joint exercise, going on between Belarus and the Russian forces. There is a complete combined armed army, I think it is the 45th, which is there right now training with the Belarus forces. They are very well poised to strike along the river and go head straight for Kyiv if push comes to shove. So will push come to shove? The simple fact is that the Russian deployment, from the purely military point of view, whatever they may say or otherwise, they are maximalist. I mean, they can't get more than this. They can't get more than this if they are contemplating any operations against the Ukraine. They have their set of grouses, and some of them do seem justified. When the Soviet Union had collapsed, they had been assured that there would be no eastward movement of NATO. But nobody had taken written assurances then. And NATO did move east. So it is only when NATO started threatening moves in Georgia and Ukraine that the Russians have reacted. The simple fact is now that there is quite a change in the military balance. From the last few years, the Russian armed forces are increasingly getting very, very certain that they have closed the technology gap with the United States and in some sectors overtaken them. They are very sure that with their S-400, S-500 Triumph, multi-missile system, they will be able to ensure no-fly zones over Ukraine. Anti-access area denial will be enforced by these missile systems. They have a lot of other equipment which they tested in Syria. And they are confident that in their backyard, they will be able to pulverize the opposition. The simple fact is that the Americans are saying that they will not intervene militarily. That is a kind of an acceptance of the military realist situation. Even with their stealth aircraft, they are not sure whether they'll be able to survive against the S-400, 500 Triumph missile system, which have multi-range missile, multiple radars. So they are only talking of the economic option. Now, with the proximity of Russia and China, America has driven Russia into the Chinese arm. And the Chinese could be the bankers of the Russians. So to what extent will the economic sanctions work, especially with reservations in Europe, especially Germany and other countries, also remains to be seen. What the Russian would no doubt like is that just with this coercive deployment, if they can force NATO and the West to, honor their red lines, to give them written assurances that there would be no NATO expansion into Ukraine. So that would be a great victory. Without firing a shot, they would have got what they wanted. They would have ensured their security on which they are feeling threatened by NATO advancement. So that would be their priority one, to try and do it without fighting. But the simple fact is that it hasn't happened so far. Talks haven't started yesterday or today when Putin has given the signal. They have been on. Putin has spoken so many times to Biden directly. Putin has spoken to the French president. Putin has spoken to the Germans. He's spoken to the Ukrainians, the Minsk dialogue. But so far, there is no concrete outcome.
Yes.
So the simple fact is that
General
beyond
Bakshi,
a point in time, will Russia be able to just withdraw its forces after having postured almost so large forces for so long? Can it just go back without any tangible
General
outcome?
Bakshi, there is some breaking news. Sorry to interrupt you there. I have some breaking news update coming in. The Russian media is just reporting now. That's the breaking update that I'm getting. That the Russian President Vladimir Putin has summoned top officials to Kremlin. Putin has summoned top officials to Kremlin amid war fears. The Russian president's meeting with top-tier cabinet members was announced today, but the purpose has not been disclosed. I'd like to get one last response from Ukraine. If I can take that question to you, the way things are developing, the language that Russia is speaking since this evening, do you think there could be some sort of an outcome expected in the next few days? Because Ukraine called for an emergency meeting with Russia. We believe there was no response given. Mr. Maxim, you want to take that question?
Yes. I believe that it will be result in nearest few days, and it will be result that Russian forces will be back. So it's obviously they can't go forward. It will be for worse for them, for everyone. But anyhow, we understand that Mr. Putin is quite crazy man. So he can do anything, but we are ready to any possibility. Thank you for your attention.
For that, Maxim Muzyka, Jakub Kudla, Major General G.D. Bakshi and Abhishek Kapoor, thank you for joining us on this broadcast, keeping a close watch on the situation. Republic also reporting from Ukraine this evening. We have some of those reports lined up for you in the course of our broadcast in a few minutes from